Good morning, everybody. Rebecca Kleefisch is my very special guest today, Thursday, February 25th, 2021. I'm Ben Dryden, and a special thank you to our guest this week, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, for our weekly Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show, which was aired on, Tuesday. Adam Jarkow and Patty Schochner for our monthly Politically Speaking show, which was yesterday. A recording of all of those can be found on our Facebook page, website, and of course our YouTube channel. Fitzy and I'll be back next Tuesday for another Ben and Fitzy show. And 1 week from today, I'll be chatting with Democrat Tom Nelson, who has announced he's running for United States Senate in Wisconsin. But today, I'm very excited to welcome back once again for another casual chat, 1848 Project President and former Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch. Rebecca, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, Ben. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's Thursday.
Awesome.
It's almost the end of the week. The sun is out, at least up here. It's not 25 degrees below, which, that's always kind of nice because we had quite a bit of a cold spell there.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to let you know, my dad, Terry Dryden, wanted to be on as a co-host this morning, but something came up, but he wanted to make sure that he told me to tell you, sorry I couldn't be here, huge supporter of yours, and to tell you hi.
Well, give Terry my well wishes and tell him that I'll catch him next time.
You got it. So what's been new with you? You were last on, I think, September of last year. You were talking about the 1848 project back then. Anything going on in your life since then, more personal related or any? I mean, you have a lot going on, and I wrote down a few things I want to talk about: cancel culture, Evers' budget, Act 10, the wolf hunt, and something new that you're doing, weekly rundown. But before that, what's new with you?
Yeah, it's been a minute. September. We had a big election between the last time we visited and today. And as you might imagine, like a lot of people who volunteered a lot of time to try and get the president across the finish line and get our legislature to veto-proof majorities, I was really disappointed. Now, I spend a lot of time in politics, and I have been either working in this world or volunteering in this world for a good long while. And so I know that you win some and you lose some. But the problem I have is we have 75 million Americans who are really, really frustrated about the fairness situation and election integrity. And so I find that a lot of the folks that I'm talking to these days for our listening sessions for the 1848 Project want to hear what is the legislature doing about election integrity. And the good news is this past week, Dewey Strobel, who's a state senator, released his bill package, and Kathy Bernier, who's also a state senator and former county clerk, is still working on her bill package. State Rep Janelle Brantgen is working on a bill package out of the Assembly. And I think folks are going to look at these bills and say, amen. Finally, we are having really thorough discussions about what we need to do in order to crack down on election fairness.
Yeah.
Now, the unfortunate thing about all of that is they'll get to the governor's desk and then he's going to veto them.
What?
But the good news about that is we're going to fight even harder. We're going to redouble our efforts, and we're going to win in 22. And then the next governor will sign those bills, and she'll sign them on day one.
She will?
Oh, you caught that.
We'll gloss over that. So real quick, for people who don't know, 1848 Project. Catch people up on what that is and your role in that.
So you'll remember from your fourth grade history that Wisconsin became a state in 1848. So the 1848 Project kind of harkens back to our pioneer spirit and all of the things that our initial settlers and Native Americans did to make this state unique and terrific, the jewel of the Midwest. And so the 1848 Project seeks to do that again, make Wisconsin the jewel of the Midwest by producing the conservative agenda for Wisconsin's future. And we're going to do it in three phases. The first one I told you we're in right now, the listening sessions. I think one of the reasons President Trump became a hero of the right is because there were a lot of folks across this country in Wisconsin who felt unheard, unlistened to. And they felt, finally, I have a voice in this man. And so these listening sessions are not designed for me to go out and talk and other people to listen to me. I listen. And so I bring a notebook and I'll ask a couple prompting questions, but they're for folks to communicate their biggest hopes and dreams, wishes, aspirations, but
Mm.
also challenges and gripes. And I'm writing all of those down. And phase one is about information gathering. We want to hear directly from the people of Wisconsin what would make their lives better. What do they want to see in this agenda? And then we're going to take all we have gathered and we're going to go to our friends in the think tank community. You know, nerds like me who are excited about building out the policy agenda for the future that's going to make Wisconsin as great as she can be. The policies I like best to address folks' issues are those that are evidence-based. Basically, they're proven, they've been tested, and we go well beyond a hypothesis. This is a theory. This stuff works.
Sure.
And we're going to build all of those policy prescriptions into our agenda that we're going to call the forward agenda. And then step 3 is going to be taking this forward agenda around the state and helping people understand, okay, this is what we built based on what you have told us. Take a look, because I think this will be a reflection of you. This will be something where you can look through it and say, I see me in this agenda, and I see a bright future for me and my family and my business and my community. And I think that's how we get to 51% in the future, Ben.
Yeah, and we know all about in Northwest Wisconsin not being heard or our voices not being heard. Just saying. So thank you so very much
I
for
totally
coming.
understand. Yeah, I was in 2 days ago. I was in Crandon, and then spent the rest of the day in Wausau. And my very first listening session actually was in Eau Claire. And so we're focusing a lot outstate because I hear you. I know that there are folks who are frustrated with the lack of attention that they are getting. And I know that this governor approaches the pandemic slightly differently than someone like me does. And he does not spend a lot of time outside of Madison. And that could be for fear's sake, or it could be that that's just how he chooses to govern. But when I was lieutenant governor, that's never how I spent my time. Time best spent is the time you're actually listening to constituents and hearing what they truly need.
Well, on a side note there, we had Scott Walker on and, of course, you on both last year. We did send out an email to Governor Evers requesting, or not directly to him, but the press office about a little over a month ago to ask if you want to come on. You don't even have to leave Madison, dude. You could just come on and talk or whatever, but we haven't heard back. So that's unfortunate.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And, you're a really good bipartisan, nonpartisan show because you just, in your introduction of me, said, hey, listen, I just did, the Tuesday show with a Democrat. And so we just had Jarko on with a Democrat. And so it's not like you're only telling one side of the story. You're giving a fair shake to people. And so that's a shame that he didn't say anything.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. We don't really get a whole lot of compliments, which leads me into our next topic, cancel culture. You had recently spoken at a national conference in Florida, but before we get into that, I just want to say, I don't know, what's wrong with your hair, and why did you pick that atrocious outfit for today's show?
This is leading to something.
Yeah.
I can tell this is leading to something. This feels like my old life, man.
Yeah, exactly. Because when I was watching if anyone doesn't know, you can go to your Facebook page. It was on there, and there was a clip of you talking down there, which was, I think, just last week, or maybe it was early this week. And you had brought up those exact words that in your previous job, you were getting, those are the kind of things that people would throw at you back when you were still in news.
Yeah, I mean, hey, at least you left off that I look so much fatter and shorter in person than I do on TV.
I
So
did see that, yeah.
Thank you, I
You bet.
guess. I said in response to this, so after I gave this talk on cancel culture, and Governor Scott Walker is now the head of this organization called YAF, the Young America's Foundation. What they do is they get young conservatives across the country on college campuses and high school campuses to build a sense of community around conservatism. And they learn together, and they have activities together. And so we're raising up the next generation of conservative leaders through this organization and many others. And Scott asked me to come down and give a talk on cancel culture because it was the week before our anniversary of introducing Act 10. And you remember that Act 10 was the big thing that we did shortly after we were inaugurated. The budget looked way uglier than what we had initially been prepared to deal with. We had new analysis as soon as we were elected, and we needed to fix a really bad budget hole, and Act 10 did that and more. The good news is Wisconsin has now saved more than $13 billion on Act 10, made some changes to collective bargaining, which is how government deals with union employees. And interestingly enough, in the governor, Tony Evers' governor's budget, he rolls back a ton of Act 10, which is almost comical, except that he is pandering to his base of very liberal, progressive voters. And I don't really know what that says for how he cares about the middle of Wisconsin and the 50% who are not big fans.
Yeah.
So that we were facing a lot of controversy, and they literally tried to cancel us. They tried to recall Scott Walker and me. I became the only lieutenant governor in American history to face a recall election. And so he said, come on down, give this speech on cancel culture, which is this current cultural phenomenon. And in response to a question afterwards, this kid asked, how do you deal with the people who say horrible and untrue things?
Yeah.
He said, I have been called a racist and a bigot and a sexist and these horrible things. And none of the things I've said would actually lead people to believe, but it's name calling, ad hominem stuff. I said, I probably have been uniquely prepared for my situation because when I was a news anchor, you're right, Ben Dryden, the things that people emailed me were things like, and these were real criticisms. Your color combination is particularly ugly today, or your hair is horrible. Can't you be consistent or try a new style? Or you're fatter, or you're skinnier, or you're taller, or you're shorter. I hated your cadence today, or how you pronounce this word. I mean, it was really surfacey, dumb stuff. So that today, when someone attacks me about an opinion I have on something that I have spent my entire life learning about, studying about, gathering data and statistics, facts, because I am a journalist, like a big J journalist at heart. I love facts. I love science. They're real. And so if somebody criticizes me for deeply held belief today, bring it, because I believe in what I say passionately, and you're not criticizing me on something dumb like my hair. I'm sorry, I woke up with it. And no, it's not really this color.
Right. Yeah, that's always bizarre to me that we just live in that world now where it's just, I don't know. When did it turn where it's just not okay to disagree with someone, but that's it, right? It's like, okay, I like this person, I just disagree with their view on this, but I'm not arrogant enough to actually think all of my views are correct. I don't know. It's just my views, I guess. But yeah, we're having a hard time, I think, it's just a society to kind of
become a graceless society in many corners of it, which makes it even more incumbent, I think, on guys like us to be full of grace, tell the truth, but do it with grace. And honestly, that's one of the lessons I have learned over my time in politics and government, because there were times when I was kind of unvarnished about what I said. And I think it is far more helpful to say what you need to say the truth, but to say it with an ounce of kindness so that you're not intentionally going out and hurting people. And I find that when you do that, more people are willing to listen. I mean, it's the stupid, Bambi's mom, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all type of thing. But it's also just telling the truth with a small amount of grace so that more people are a little bit more open-minded to what you have to say.
Yeah. Well,
And that's the opposite of cancel culture.
right. We actually went through an experience with that. I think I've said this before on the show where we had someone that does a Sunday message. It's like a Bible message, right? He's a pastor, and it's Sunday. It's north of Wisconsin, so that just kind of makes sense for us. And I guess they didn't like something, and we had a whole bunch of people try to shut us down. They called all of our advertisers, told them to quit us, and it was like, what? I mean, that's stupid. It's really kind of took on a life of its own, and thankfully, all of our advertisers are smart enough to go, yeah, don't care. That's just kind of how it works. On that note, I saw your chat on YouTube with Scott Walker. We were interviewing him, and there was a commenter. Only one person commented. I was going to respond back, but I figured I don't want to get into it. But
I didn't see it. What did they say?
Yeah, I'll tell you right now. Well, there was more to it. I just took out the first part. It said, Kleefisch is more of suck-up than someone who can hold an interview. And I want to respond that, have you ever seen one of my shows? That's nothing. She got nothing on me.
Well,
but it was
listen,
good.
I don't think that I was trying to do a 2020
You're right.
or this wasn't supposed to be hardball.
Yeah.
This was two friends sitting down to talk about what life looked like and felt like 10 years later.
Yeah.
And I think we captured that moment. There are a lot of people who don't know the inside of my relationship with the governor. And, there are a lot of people who will speculate, how much flexibility or how much freedom is built into a partnership like that, when constitutionally the lieutenant governor's job is basically just to be an understudy. So what do the inside workings of that pair look like? And frankly, I give Scott Walker a ton of credit for what he allowed the lieutenant governor's office to do when I was the occupant of that office. I think we were able to do extraordinary things when it comes to, policy building early on with the tax reform roundtables, and then policy and continuation when I was the co-chair of the task force on opioids abuse and the co-chair on the minority unemployment task force, and did a lot of work on not just economic development, but workforce development, fighting poverty. We built out the task force to end homelessness as we know it. I was able to, in my waning days, final days in office, see a dream come true, and our first job center be put in one of our correctional facilities, because I firmly believe that we can fill our labor needs here in Wisconsin, and we can do it and reduce recidivism at the same time. So he allowed Lieutenant Governor's office to have enough bandwidth and freedom and flexibility to do really great things. I could develop my own portfolio of issues I cared about and still, do the understudy part.
So the budget, I want to get to this part. You're talking about Act 10, and we've kind of touched on that a little bit. Yesterday during our Politically Speaking show, Adam Jarko had brought up, because when I asked about his, what he thought about the budget, he provided some insight and said the first thing he noticed was the political part of it, that it's, to him, that budget was an announcement that he's running for governor. Now, I don't know what your view. Okay, so I was going to ask if you agreed with that, and then just overall, obviously, what do you think of Evers' budget proposal?
I think it's highly partisan, and I think that's one of the reasons Jarko said this seemed like a re-election announcement. That, and I don't know whether you watched the video, but the band at the end, and we went back to the corporate music to put the glamour videos in the middle. But this is what I find most astounding about this budget. I've got the budget in brief right here, and on page 43, follow along at home, everyone. You go. So in Wisconsin, we do a 2-year budget, a biennial budget. We go from here. Almost $2 billion in structural surplus to here 2 years later, after Tony Evers raises taxes and allows local tax increases, which are super regressive because they're on a sales tax, all the way down to a negative $660 million. You go from structural positive to structural negative over a period of 2 years. In the meantime, he raises taxes. That's literally $1.8 billion in a negative turnaround. Who does that? Who does that type of thing? How can you magically turn a surplus even in the middle of a pandemic when you shut down the economy? You turn a surplus into a structural deficit? Why and why? Why do you do that? Because you have folks who clearly wrote this budget, who have never had to wait in line at UI, at the Department of Workforce Development. These people clearly never missed a paycheck due to COVID. They're not small business owners. They're not suffering in the tourism or the restaurant industry. They're clearly not people who are upset or angry or worried because their kids are crying at home because they're in the middle of virtual education, which is not best for most. And it's just a bummer. I mean, it spends 9% more than, and I wonder if you're going to spend 9% more at government, where's all our 9% raises that we all have 9% more to give?
Sure.
I don't understand why he thinks that this is a good way to treat the people of Wisconsin who have been through so much over the last year. So much.
Do you think
this
there's any,
to me is a slap in the face?
Do you think there's any downside for him doing this? I mean, clearly he knows that, I shouldn't say clearly, I would assume that he knows that this is not getting passed as is, not even close to that. So why not just do all those things, just knowing that, well, okay, I might as well just like negotiating. I'm going to start really, really high, and my liberal base is going to be very happy with I'm doing all of these things. I know it's not going to get done, but then we can just blame it on the Republicans for not doing it. Is there really any downside for him proposing a budget as big as this was?
I'm going to say yes, only because I don't imagine Tony Evers facing a primary. And so why?
Right.
Why pander to the progressive fanatics in your party when you're essentially running in a general election and you're speaking to all the people of Wisconsin? In a budget address, you should be talking to all of the people of Wisconsin. There was no empathy for those people who have to buy insurance off the private market. There was no empathy for those business owners who have suffered in the middle of this pandemic. There was no empathy for, now remember, this budget came out days before he finally agreed with the legislature on the tax treatment of the federal dollars that came from President Trump's administration to help these small businesses keep folks employed. It was called PPP, or the Payroll Protection Plan. And so these small businesses said, hey, federal government, thanks for the rescue. We're going to keep our employees on board. We're going to keep, trying to keep our businesses open so the economy doesn't completely collapse. And our legislature said, well, we can't, the federal government is not going to tax that money. It's not like it was fun or the lottery or this, awesome windfall. This was a rescue, a lifeline to keep these small businesses open. But Tony Evers in this budget says, hey, let's tax them. And it was so tone deaf to me. He doesn't understand what the rest of Wisconsin is going through. He doesn't understand that regular people are not buying the name brand Cheez-Its right now. We're going to Aldi. We're buying store brands. We're not going on vacation. What we're doing in going out to eat is basically supporting small business owners. It's not because we have piles of cash laying around or, we're making 9% more so you can spend 9% more. It's just kind of a shame. It just feels really out of touch.
On that note, where are we with PPP? And I know there was a lot of concern about before because there was people who didn't know, and we keep bringing up Adam Jarko. Trust me, I'm not getting paid for that, but I should. I'm totally going to. If he runs for something, I better get some, kickbacks for that. He wrote something about kind of a scenario that a lot of businesses didn't know, and we published it, and a lot of people didn't know. I certainly didn't know it at the time, and I thought it got reversed, but I don't know where we landed on that. Where everyone that took those PPP loans, then you have to pay tax. Taxes on it. Is that now quashed, right? So people can go in and they don't have to worry about it. Okay.
It is, but the insincerity of it all is, Ben, this came out, this document, he wrote this budget, including taxing PPP. And then a couple days later, he turned around and he signed the legislature's
Okay.
tax treatment of PPP, saying, okay, we're not going to tax it. But
Wha-
listen, this number, that means that number is
Right.
even bigger. The structural deficit is even bigger, which makes this even more insincere and more out of touch. And so I don't honestly understand why he did this.
Yeah.
It seems very unreasonable. It seems very out of touch, at least with the folks that we're talking to. And we're talking to tons of people across the state, not just Republicans, not just Patriot or Tea Party groups. We're talking with business leaders, we're talking with government leaders, some Democrats,
Yeah.
and some people I would even consider liberals who are equally frustrated with this, because unless you understand what it's like to be in the economy right now and not to be insulated by the bubble that is state government, that is Madison,
Yeah.
you don't fully understand what folks are going through. And I try and get out every single week, several times a week, for listening sessions with people who are just going through it.
Yeah. We do have something up here. It's from Romaine Quinn. Hopefully you should be able to see that on your screen there. So I want
I
to thank you for your
do.
past work and your blood. You know, they're having a baby here shortly.
Oh,
Yeah, I
congratulations,
think in
Maureen. That's
March or something.
awesome.
Yeah, I know. I think that's why he's at home.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he makes a really good point. He says, when we had our old jobs, we were very, very active in the Northwoods. And that was very, very intentional, sending cabinet secretaries, touring our sand mine. And even now, just as a volunteer, when I am around campaigning for legislators and even for President Trump,
Mhm.
it was and remains very intentional to do listening sessions and to do political events that are not all southeastern Wisconsin centric. I live in southeastern Wisconsin. I live halfway in between Milwaukee and Madison, just off the freeway near Johnson Creek. And there are a lot of people who will say, you live in a certain area, you get their news. So I get the news on we don't have cable, but we have an antenna. And so we get Madison and Milwaukee news. But it's very important, if that's the news you're getting, to actively go out and seek the news that other communities are putting out.
Mm.
Because if you are not actively seeking it, you can't count on people who are very busy telling you everything that's going on in their lives.
Mm.
You need to actively seek them out. And so
Like,
that's what we've been doing.
like DrydenWire. Fantastic. So I want to get to one other thing here. I mean, obviously, if you have anything else you want to discuss, and that was Wisconsin's wolf hunt. So I need actually some explaining on this, right? So Evers administration, the DNR lost in a court thing, I think with who is that? Will, right? Requiring to hold a wolf hunt this week, which I think is now finished. Tom Tiffany's explained it to me, or tried to explain it to me. I'm just too stupid to understand this. I don't get it. I don't hunt for anything only just because I don't want to. I don't know. There's no particular reason other than, I don't know. Whatever. Other people can go and hunt. I don't like guns. I don't like killing stuff. And I don't need the food that bad and all these other reasons. Like your husband and Adam go, hunting, and that's just gross. But whatever.
Yes, Darko and Joel hunt a lot.
Yeah. Either he's snowmobiling or he's hunting. So what part I don't understand is the wolves. Okay, this part I think I do understand. That wolves are bad because they kill, livestock or horses or things around. So we should go and hunt to keep the things down. Kind of like deer hunting season, I think, right? Keep diseases down and hitting cars and
diseases down and populations.
Sure. Yep. So I totally get all of that part. What I don't understand is the pushback from that. What's the other side? That one I don't understand, because it's got to be, there's always another side.
I don't know. They're
so
pretty,
what actually is the rationale, the logic behind, no, we shouldn't do that? And okay, I just don't know what that is.
Well, I think before it was, oh my goodness, their numbers are so greatly reduced. Are we going to go the way of the passenger pigeon with the gray wolf?
Okay.
And so for 7 years, there was no wolf hunt in Wisconsin. And now the pushback, now that numbers have reached a point where it's a tipping point and it's dangerous for people and pets up north. I don't know really what the argument against is. Like I said, they're pretty, maybe. Um, I got nothing.
Yeah,
They're a
yeah,
dangerous animal, and the population needs to be controlled. It's not like hunters are going out there and wiping them out. It's controlling the population so that they're not dangerous to livestock and pets. And it's not like they harvested the majority of wolves. They took 82 out of the population, and the hunt lasted
yeah,
2 days.
yeah.
Um, People were good, ethical shooters, and it's important to control those populations
Mhm.
because when food sources are scarce, you see what they go after. And wolves are not pets. They may be pretty, okay, but you have to remember that in Wisconsin, we actually pay people to compensate when a wolf, takes down
Right.
a dog or a cow. And so this actually has some dollars
Mm.
attached to it, bizarrely enough. So it's also just about controlling the population to make sure that the population is healthy. Listen, hunters and farmers are our first and truest conservationists because if you look at what they do, their lives and livelihoods, their hobbies and their hopes, they're gone unless they take good care of the environment that they use.
Mm.
And so I honestly credit these groups with doing a great job of conservation in Wisconsin.
On your Facebook page, just recently, the 20th, so 5 days ago, it was about the wolf situation, and you had put, "This is a huge win for hunters and the rule of law in Wisconsin. The Evers administration tried to illegally block the wolf hunt from taking place, infringing on the rights of Wisconsin hunters." So again, since I'm very unfamiliar with this and very naive and ignorant, so tried to illegally block. What does that mean? I mean, so this, I don't know. Could you walk me through
Well, it
that?
had Sure. They had already ruled that the wolf hunt could and should take place. It was
Okay.
moving forward, and the Evers administration, and again, just very out of touch, stepped in to try and block it. And once again, I don't understand the logic behind it. Wolves are dangerous animals. We
Uh,
have an overpopulation that is jeopardizing livestock and pets. And I don't understand the reasoning behind it. You ask, why? Just don't know. And so,
uh,
yes, you had folks step in and say this is going to move forward, which is very important because we have a right, hunters have a right here in Wisconsin to appreciate our sporting heritage. We're one of the states that has a right to hunt. This is part of who we are. One of the reasons we call it the 1848 Project is because I think it's important to remember our history, to
mm,
learn from our history. One of the things that we can appreciate from our history is how those early pioneers and Native Americans survived, but also thrived because of our hunting culture.
which actually leads me to the last thing that I had written down was your weekly rundown, and it's
Yes.
on 1848 project 1848 Project Wisconsin. I think if you just Google that or not, put that in YouTube, 1848 Project Wisconsin. I saw that on there. Tell us about that. Your weekly rundown.
What we've been noticing as we travel the state is not everybody knows yet about the 1848 project, and that we want to listen to you. We want to have a piece of your mind inside this agenda for Wisconsin's future. And so we're reaching out to people across the state now over the radio in these little 1 minute commentaries where we talk about some of the things that we're learning and also some of the things that we're seeing that maybe deserve a little bit of an analysis.
Sure.
And so you're going to see these or hear these, I suppose, on the radio for the next number of weeks. And it's going to be all across the state. We're going to do it pretty much weekly, every day of the week. And if you miss them on the radio, you can catch them on our social media or
Mhm.
1848project.org. We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, as you mentioned, and we're also on Facebook. And so we would love for you to join us either at a listening session or please email us info@1848project.org and tell us what's on your mind. We genuinely want to know. This is not a you listen to us session. This is a listening session where we want to hear from you.
Nice.
And if you can't make it to one of those, just let us know what you're thinking.
Yeah. I mean, basically at this point, you just put an 1848 project in Google and you're going to find everything. You're on every platform pretty much. So, all right. So what else did you want to discuss or bring up or anything? That was all the stuff that I wanted to make sure that I discussed with you. But is there something else that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, let's reopen schools.
Yeah.
Governor Evers has not even mentioned this. He puts record numbers of dollars in this budget into K-12 education, and there was no mention of reopening Wisconsin schools. And Ben, in your neck of the woods, you may not be experiencing this. I'll be frank, in my neck of the woods, my kids go to a school where their superintendent actually listened to our parent surveys, and they did 3 of them this summer. And we as parents said, open the schools up. And so they did. And my kids, well, one of my kids goes to school every single day. Now she wears a mask, and there is a lot of plexiglass, but they're doing athletics, and these kids can compete. And they're actually learning when they have virtual days, because they do have a strict quarantine policy. When they have virtual days, it's like listening to Charlie Brown's teacher coming out of her computer. And it's really hard. If you're an auditory learner, that's a problem. It was one of the reasons that I chose in-person school, because you can still choose in our district where we open and enroll our kids to do virtual learning. But I chose, no, get them in class. And my big girl just graduated in January, and then she started college classes a week later. But now she's at UWM taking these college classes. She's never been to UWM. It's all virtual. And she has these group chats on her socials that, these kids, they want to, rebel, mutiny, because it's so hard to understand the teacher or professor over these virtual classes. And honestly, not everybody is in our situation. We don't have broadband where we are. We're really, really in the middle of nowhere. And so we have to, like right now, I'm using my cell phone as a hotspot to connect to you and the rest of Wisconsin as we're having this conversation. Sure. Not everybody has that situation, but anyone without reliable connectivity has got to be frustrated by this. But I'll double down and I'll say these urban districts where these teachers union bosses, not teachers, because the vast majority of teachers I hear from wants to be in school. They see how their children are in pain, and they see the depression and the anxiety and the instances of obesity. They see these statistics in their children. They see them rising. But these teachers union bosses are saying, no way. We want to keep them shut down. And it invariably affects those children in high poverty neighborhoods and majority minority neighborhoods. And that's practically criminal. It's definitely immoral.
Hey, I thought of one more question for you.
Yeah.
Should Republicans get on board with legalizing recreational use of marijuana?
That's an interesting question, because I'm starting to poll that in my listening sessions. I had a listening session with millennial generation entrepreneurs 2 weeks ago, and I found something I was very surprised by. It was brought up naturally and organically, and I was surprised. And then this past week in my listening session in Wausau, there was a ginseng farmer who's also a hemp farmer. And he's like, yeah, we're planting hemp. We're waiting for the moment. We're ready to pull off the hemp and start planting pot. And, I know that there's a hemp industry in Wisconsin, and I know that there are probably a lot of people who are eager for medicinal marijuana, but my experience with it is slightly different. So hear me out. Years and years and years ago, I was 27 years old, and my dad was dying of pancreatic cancer. So pancreatic cancer is a really awful one. And most people after a diagnosis, it's 6 months or less. And for my dad, it was 4 months, and it was horrible. And in order to deal with the chemotherapy side effects, he was prescribed medical marijuana. And you're going to say, 20 years ago, they didn't have medical marijuana in Wisconsin. They don't have medical marijuana in Wisconsin today. That's not true. In fact, we have in a prescription drug form called Marinol. It can be prescribed. It was prescribed to my father. Here's the thing, Ben. It comes in a gel capsule. And one of the things that I have heard is people don't want a gel capsule. People want to smoke pot. And if you talk to law enforcement, they will tell you that marijuana is a gateway drug. That may be one reason, but let me add to that an additional reason. When you start to regulate a product like marijuana and you start to tax it, and that's one of the big arguments for, right? If we tax marijuana, then it's going to bring in all this money to the state, and the governor says, oh, we're going to put all this marijuana money into K-12 education. Okay. But if you take a look and study the states that have done this, hasn't really worked out the way they had planned. But additionally, for those who are seeking out the product, the black market is still probably going to be able to offer a cheaper product. But the problem is because that cheaper product will be unregulated by government, you don't know what you're getting. And what if laced inside what you believe to just be marijuana is in fact another drug that may even be cheaper, that is far more addictive and will keep you going back to that dealer? Listen, I was one of the co-chairs of the governor's task force on opioids abuse, and I have heard story after story from people who have survived and who are today continuing to work on substance use disorder. And they have had dealers hook them on drugs, and their body has gotten used to it, and it is a horrible thing to deal with. And if we were really, really good at alcohol, maybe this could be a different conversation. But every year we get top 10 states for binge drinking. It seems like every year we additionally get top 10 states for per capita bars, top 10 states for DUIs. And if we can't do a good job and self-regulate on that one, it concerns me, the discussion about recreational marijuana for the future. And then I have the additional layer of personal experience on the medical side. So it's just an interesting conversation, but I am routinely polling on it anecdotally, just like hands raised, hands down in my listening sessions. And I'm keeping my ear to the ground because I want to hear people say their piece on this. Because if there's something that I don't know, I want to know it. Like I said, I'm a journalist at heart. I love facts. I love data. Yeah,
it was great because the budget, you're going through it, and I was literally thinking, man, you really are a journalist. It's great. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I know that I can get maybe a little nerdy on some of this stuff, but
that's good.
It sometimes is helpful, when you hear someone's story that you go, I read a nerd paper on that last week, and I think I have the prescription for that. I think I have a thing that could help you with that. And that's why both sides are really important. We've got to listen hard, but then we've got to think big.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell. That's all I think about every time I hear it.
The forward agenda.
And
cowbell. Cowbell's good, but you can do the forward agenda with cowbell if you want to do that.
I love it.
That's cool.
Rebecca, you're awesome. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And thank you for the nice compliments about my hair and outfit.
Yep. Picking up your sarcasm.
I love you forever for that.
Yep. Special thank you.
It's really nice too.
Yep. Special thank you to Rebecca Kleefisch for taking time to come on for a chat this morning. And thank all of you for watching. We're off until next week's Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. So until then, stay safe. Stay positive, and as always, have a blessed day.